let us get into our lesson for today. So like I say, we're going to start off with like the basics of parallel lines. We'll step it up on Monday's lesson. But what I just want to discuss is what a parallel line is, because it's all very well me saying, oh, we're going to now work with parallel lines. But if you don't know what a parallel line is, then my words are meaningless. So very importantly, guys, parallel lines are lines that have a very special relationship with each other, whereby they will stay the same distance apart from each other for their entire length. So if they go on to infinity, they will stay the same distance apart. Essentially, they never touch each other or intersect with each other. What this essentially means is that they run in the same direction. So you can almost think of train tracks. Direction. Sorry, I forgot how to spell direction there for a second. If you think of train tracks, they run in the same direction. They need to carry a train somewhere. They remain the same distance apart all the way along their length. And so they are an example of real life parallel lines. Whoop. Whoop. In order for us in maths to show that lines are parallel in geometry, we go and we put arrows on them to show that they are parallel. Okay. Parallel lines also have their own symbol that we use. That symbol is quite literally two parallel lines. Now, Compass asked a question of, do the lines have to be the same length? No. Okay, so I could have a set of parallel lines, one that's quite short, one that's much longer, but as long as for the whole length of the shorter line, the distance between them is equal, they're the same distance apart all the way along their length, they can still be parallel. Okay, so these two lines we can still say are parallel to each other. Think of like a trapezium. Okay, a trapezium's top and bottom lengths aren't necessarily the same, but the top and bottom sides are parallel to each other. Okay, so on for yes, exactly the same thing as what I said. They remain the same distance apart. They will never meet or intersect with each other, like I said. Okay, so guys, this little image here is just for us to see, like, my words, just to identify some parallel lines so that we know what we're looking out for. But like I say, on a diagram, we will always represent parallel lines with little arrows. So just based on looking at this diagram and sort of looking at the distance between lines, hopefully what we can see is that the line AB would be parallel to the line CD. Right, I can see that because the distance apart from each other is equal along their lengths. And so AB is parallel to CD. Now that's quite a sentence to have to write out. And because, as I often say, mathematicians are lazy, and because maths is a language by itself, we can write this differently. So because we know we have the symbol for parallel lines, we would literally write AB is parallel to CD. That is how we would state that we have parallel lines. Another set of parallel lines that we have, hopefully that we can see, is the fact that EF is parallel to GH. Again, they have the same distance apart from each other all the way along their length. And so once again, we can state those parallel lines. Now that we know the symbol, easy as anything, EF is parallel to GH. All right, so parallel lines, they're lines that never meet. They have the same distance in between each other. That is how, or those are the lines we're going to work with. Again, on your diagrams, you cannot, and I'm going to say this probably a few times, you may not, cannot, may never assume that lines are parallel. You will know that they are parallel because we will put arrows on them. If there are no arrows, you cannot assume that the lines are parallel. Do not make assumptions. Either prove it or don't use it. Okay, so the arrows show parallel lines. we sometimes use 2 arrows or 3 arrows, especially when we've got multiple sets of parallel lines. But look out for the arrows, they mean parallel. Right, if you want to take a screenshot of this, feel free to. This is more just an introduction to what parallel lines are. Oh, golly. But we're now going to actually look at the reasons that we use with our parallel lines. Okay, so if you want screenshots, take them now. Otherwise, I'm moving on. Screenshots, take your screenshots. I'm moving. Okay. So guys, this is the important stuff. This is the stuff we need to know. So with parallel lines, there are 3 important relationships that we have and that we need to know. Now, a lot of people learn them as fun. And the reason we learn them as fun is because those are the general shapes that we need to look out for. I sometimes use fuzz because sometimes the N could be sideways and look like a Z. But honestly, what you need to get in your head is these are the general shapes that we look for in our diagrams. Okay, so when we specifically have parallel lines, we get 3 cool relationships with those parallel lines and the angles that they create. So the first one we're going to look at is this F shape. Now, guys, this F shape could be in a multitude of forms. It could be backwards and squished. It can be very squished. It can be on its side. As long as you have a general F shape somewhere, you are working with what we call corresponding angles. Right, now, the relationship of corresponding angles is they sit in the same corresponding position in the diagram, and they are equal to each other. So I'm going to explain that a little bit more. If we look at our diagram, the first thing I always do is I find my parallel lines. Okay, that's just a must. We do that first. So I can see that AB is parallel to CD. I know that it's true because there's arrows on them. Those arrows are telling me they're parallel. The next important bit, guys, is we always should have a line joining the 2 parallel lines, and that line is called a transversal. Don't stress too much about the transversal in terms of like getting a specific definition or whatever. All you need to know is that it's a line that joins the 2 parallel lines, and without it we just have open ends, so we don't actually have angles created. We need a transversal in order for the angles to exist. So with my parallel lines, with my transversal, I can see an F shape here. And importantly, what I see is that the angle BAC here in the top corner of the F, okay, whatever, corresponds or sits in the same relative position to the angle DCF. Because they're sitting in the same position, what we say is that they are equal to each other. Okay, those 2 angles are equal. So corresponding angles are equal to each other. They sit in the same position, same relative position rather, so they're the same size. This is geometry. You're making a statement. You have to give a reason for your statement. And so all of my reasons are down here in the little purple blocks. Our reason for corresponding angles is, shockingly, corresponding angles. Remember, we can abbreviate and use symbols. We don't have to write out corresponding angles. And guys, very importantly, we always have to state the parallel lines. Now, the reason for that is there's many. One of them is the fact that sometimes your diagram has multiple parallel lines, and so you need to be specific about which pair you are working with. All right, and it's also just to identify which lines you're working with, and so which angles you're then referring to. If you don't have labels on your parallel lines, literally all you have to say is then just parallel lines. So if you can't specifically say AB is parallel to CD, just write there parallel lines, you're sorted. Joshua, I have no idea what that means, if I'm being honest, so I'm just gonna move on. If you can ask a specific question, I can help you, but I have no idea what A, B, C, D, E, or F is. All right, so Guys, corresponding angles, they are equal to each other. They sit in the same relative position. They are the same size. If we move over to the U shape, now again, guys, be mindful. It could be a U, it could be an upside down N, it could be a C, it could be very, very squished. And apparently I can't draw a squished one. So it could be not that. It could be something like that. As long as you get a general sort of cup U horseshoe shape, you're sorted for co-interior angles. So like I say, this shape shows us co-interior angles. Sort of makes sense. If we look at the shape, we're talking about the two angles inside, interior to the shape that we're working with. But importantly, guys, co-interior angles are not equal to each other. So again, let's quickly identify those parallel lines. I can see that I have the parallel line AB, which is parallel to CD. I have my transversal down at the bottom AC, and I've got two angles created. Angle BAC, so this one here that I've done in orange on the left, is not the same as angle DCA. I know they're not the same because if you look at the little tick marks on them, BCA, the one in orange, has one line on it, whereas DCA has got two strikes on it. That's showing us that the angles are different sizes. What is important about co-interior angles, guys, is the fact that when you add them together, you get 180 degrees. Okay, that will always be true for this U shape. So co-interior angles add to 180 degrees. So they're not equal, they add up to 180 degrees. Again, we make a statement, so we have to give a reason. Our reason here is co-interior angles, which we abbreviate to co-int angles. We have to state the parallel lines. And again, if you don't have labels, just say parallel lines. Right, so that's co-interior angles. That's the U shape or the cup shape. That's what we look out for. The final sort of relationship that we have with parallel lines is the zigzag shape. So we just use N as our reference shape, but it's a zigzag. So if I identify my parallel lines, AB is parallel to CG. I know that again because there's the arrows on them. I've got my transversal line of BC joining those two parallel lines. And yes, it's an N shape, but what you look out for is the zigzag. What I see is that the angle ABC, sorry, just getting there very slowly, the angle ABC is equal to the angle BCG. They are in alternate positions to each other. They are equal in size. Okay, so again, these are our alternate angles. And importantly, they are equal to each other. If we make a statement, we have to give a reason. So our reason here is alternate angles, which we abbreviate alt angles. And remember to state your parallel lines. So these are the three reasons that deal specifically with parallel lines. These are the ones we're going to look at today. But guys, don't forget all of the other reasons that we've learned. Angles on a straight line, angles around a point, vert up angles, etc. Right, so I'm just going to wait here for you to take a screenshot. If you guys have been doing what I suggested and doing like an information sheet of just your reasons for yourself, this would now go onto that reason sheet. But take a screenshot and let's have a look at some examples. And just while you're taking screenshots, I clearly need to turn on my light. There we go. Alrighty, guys, so let's have a look at an example. So if we start with example 1, We're starting off basic, it's going to get harder. The first thing that we always do, grade 8s, is identify if we have parallel lines. Remember, we do that by looking for the lines with arrows on them. So I can see here that I have got the line, no, I don't like that. I have got the fact that AB is parallel to FG. I know that, again, because there are those arrows on those lines. That's telling me that they're parallel. Once I've done that, I now look and see what information do I have? How does it help me get what I want? So remember, the question here would be determine the value of the unknown angles. We could say that. Sometimes the way we phrase it is we say the value of the lowercase letters. So in this case, our lowercase letter or our unknown value is this X angle over there. So if we identify that, I don't know X, I want to find X. Now guys, this is where we look for those shapes, the F shape, the U shape, the Z shape. In this diagram, I have all three, but I need to find the one, or I need to identify the one that helps me find X. So if I look at X and I look at the fact that I've been given 110, if we consider the position of those two, hopefully what we see is that we actually have an F shape. So here's my F shape. And this tells me that X and 110 correspond to each other. They are in the same relative position. So I can now set up my answer. Remember, statement reason, this is still geometry. We still have to give reasons for all of our statements. And so we can now state that we know that X is 110 degrees. And our reason that we now have is the fact that it is a corresponding angle. Remember, use the abbreviations, use the symbols, make your life easier. We have to state the parallel line. So AB is parallel to FG. And that's it. We found X. We've got the value of our unknown angle. We have done what is asked of us. Right, so Jason asked if the alternate angle lines are different lengths, can they still be considered alternate angles? Yes. Remember, I said length doesn't matter. So you could have a length like that, and then something like, oh golly, sorry, and something like that. Those angles are still alternate to each other. As long as those lines are parallel, they're still alternate. Right, take your screenshots. If anyone has any questions, now's the time to raise your hand. Otherwise, we're going to have a look at another example. Okay. Nice, guys. So let's have a look at question 2. I did have a number 2 here somewhere, but anyways. Okay, sorry, I do see that there's a hand. Joshua?
Hi, ma'am.
Hi, Princess.
Ma'am, you see, ma'am, I want to ask, ma'am, how is X equals to 110, ma'am? Because I couldn't see how you calculated it, ma'am, because Joshua is busy moving the screen. Bring my pen.
Okay, so I didn't calculate it. Remember, I've got the F shape. So look at the green. It's an F. Because it's an F, they are corresponding angles, which means they are equal. So because X and 110 are in the same sort of corresponding position in the shape, they're equal to each other.
Oh, okay.
All right,
Yes,
good.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Okay, guys, so question 2. Again, what we do is we identify our parallel lines. AB is parallel to CD. I've got the arrows on there. I know that that's a true statement. Then I go and have a look at where my unknown is. Here's X, and I can see that I've been given an angle of 45. So based on, I mean, this diagram is a real giveaway, but based on what I have, based on the position of my angles, I can identify that Z shape. And so what it means is that X and 45 are alternate angles. And what that means is that they're equal to each other. So we make our statement. That statement being the fact that x is equal to 45 degrees. And we give our reason for that statement, the fact that they are alternate angles, alt angles. We state our parallel lines, AB, parallel to CD, and that's it. I've worked out x, don't need to do anything else, I'm done. Okay, so guys, really not too hard at this point. When our diagrams start getting more complicated, that's where things start to unravel a little bit. Take your screenshots. If anyone has questions, raise your hand. Otherwise, we can have a look at the next one. Okay, good, guys. So let's have a look at question 3. So question 3, now we're starting to increase our complexity a little bit. Not only because my diagram is a little bit more complicated, but also because I've got 2 unknowns. So remember, the first thing I do is I identify my parallel lines. So Dile, I don't really know what you're asking. How do we calculate this? I've explained the first 2 questions. So if there's something that you're confused about, have a look. Okay, the Z, well, it's just the Z, so it means that they're alternate. Remember, alternate angles are equal to each other. So because I know what, because I can see that Z, yes, because X and 45 are in alternate positions, they are equal. There's no working out I need to do. All right. One less, sorry. Guys, my reasons are in brackets because as you move up in grades, we no longer separate, or you don't really separate your page into statement reason. You can, like there's nothing wrong with that. But as we move up in the grades, the way we would actually set our answer out would be something like x equals 45 degrees, and then we put our reason in brackets. Alt angles AB parallel to CD. You don't have to do it now if you're separating your page. Okay, it's just something that we do later on. Sorry, I didn't even realize that I was doing it. Okay, so back to question 3. We've identified our parallel lines. BC is parallel to DE. And guys, like I say, we've got 2 unknowns here. We've got the unknown A. Remember, both of those A's are exactly the same. It's the same variable, it's the same value. But we also have got the variable B. So we've got A that we need to find, and we've got B. Now, grade 8s, I've told you this before, you don't have to start with A. Just because it's the first in the alphabet doesn't mean you have to start with it. But sometimes starting alphabetically actually is going to help us find the rest of our answers. Now, what you should also notice here is that nowhere on this diagram do I have any numbers, but I'm being asked to determine the value of A and B. So how am I going to do that if I don't have numbers? Okay, that line got away from me. Let's try that again. I've got no numbers, I've got no values, but I'm being asked to calculate the value of A and B. So now I need to be mindful of this when I go and look for my shapes, the F, the U, and the Z, or the M. Okay, so the first thing that I see if I focus just on A, so ignore B, if we focus on A, what I see is that A is actually in a sideways U or C shape. So what it is co-interior. These 2 angles are co-interior to each other. And so what that means is I can make my first statement. 3A plus A is equal to 180 degrees. Remember, co-interior angles, are not equal. They add up to 180 degrees. So we've made our statement. We're going to give our reason. I did the brackets again, sorry. Co-interior angles, BC is parallel to DE. Now I'm solving for A. I actually need to get the value of A. So 3A and A are like terms, which means added together, they give us 4A. Oh, excuse me. Okay, 4A is equal to 180. Again, we're solving for A, guys. So what we want to do is we want to divide both sides by 4 in order to get A alone. And 180 divided by 4 gives us 45 degrees. So because I've now worked out the value of A, I know that this angle down, this angle down here in the corner at angle BDE is 45 degrees, because that's what A is. And this angle here at the top, angle CBD, is equal to 3 times 45 degrees. And 3 times 45 degrees is 135 degrees. So we know the value of both angles now. We actually have numbers that we can work with. And so now we can go and work out what B is. Okay, so B is the one I scratched out because we didn't want to focus on it just yet. If I now look at what shapes might be useful to me, hopefully what I see is that B falls in this F shape that I've done in blue. So angle B corresponds to the angle 3A. They are equal to each other. They're in the same relative position. So now I can make my next statement that angle B is equal to 3A. And my reason for that is corresponding angles. State my parallel lines. BC is parallel to DE. And now, guys, remember, you have worked out what A is. And because we did the substitution, we know that the angle 3A is equal to 135. So I know what that value is. So I can say that, therefore, B is equal to 135 degrees because it corresponds with angle 3A. Okay, so this was definitely a slightly trickier one. So if you struggle a little bit, that's absolutely fine, because like I said, definitely trickier. But what we now need to start getting the hang of is the fact that we are going to combine multiple reasons into questions, and we need to be able to deal with that. So take your screenshots. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand. Sorry, Carl, yep. Oh, hang on, sorry, I need to unmute you, right, Carl? There's a pop-up unmute, there we go.
Ma'am, good evening.
Evening.
Ma'am, may you please re-explain it from 4A equal 180 degrees?
Okay, do you understand where the 4A's come from?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so guys, if we look at the A1 again, let's get a brightly colored pen here. All right, so if we look at the 4A, remember this is in the U shape that we're working with. So we know that 3A plus A must give me 180 because that's what co-interior angles are. When I add them together, I get 180 degrees. Now remember, the goal is to solve for A. I don't want 3A, I want A and A alone. So 3A and A are like terms. I can add them together. 3A plus A gives me that 4A. And so 4A is equal to 180. Then I use my inverse operations to solve the equation. I divide both sides by 4, and I get that A is 45 degrees. So if we go back, we've substituted in and we've worked out that the top angle is 135 and the bottom one 145. Remember, co-interior angle says to us that if we add them together, I must get 180. 135 degrees plus 45 degrees does give me 180 degrees. So that is clearly showing that they are co-interior angles. Okay, so the 4A situation has come from me setting up an equation using what I know and then solving for the unknown. So Carl, I hope that makes sense. If not, pop a message in the chat and we'll help you, but I hope that makes sense. Any other questions, guys? And I see there on the chat, oh, I forgot to do the 3 times 45. Please remember that. That's why I say to you guys, once you know a value, put it back into your diagram. So I went straight away and I went and substituted A in to get my 45 and 135. because otherwise we make a silly slip up and we forget to refer back to what we already know. Okay, so guys, I'm assuming you've all got screenshots. Cameron, yes, there's always a quiz on Wednesdays. Alrighty, so I want you to, again, I should have a number 4 here. I don't know where it's gone. I want you to try 4 by yourselves. So notice that there's an X and a Y that you need to use here. I will give you one hint in that, remember that we have got other reasons that we know. Angles on a straight line, angles around a point, vertically opposite angles. We've also now today learned parallel lines, corresponding, co-interior, alternate. So you need to take every bit of knowledge that you have on geometry and you need to try and answer this question. So in the chat, I want X answer reason, Y answer reason. Want to see those reasons. Remember, no reason, no marks. You have to give a reason. Or rather, no reason, less marks, because you will lose all the reason marks. Right, and if you're really struggling, guys, what I suggest you do, first identify your parallel lines, and then see if that helps you get anywhere. Start with parallel lines. Look at as well what information you have. You've been given 134 degrees. Why is that helpful to you? Grade 8, remember I've said this before, but as our diagrams start getting a little bit more complex, remember there's often multiple reasons that you can use to get an answer. So for this one, there's a lot of different ways that you could get X and Y. Obviously, we want to try and find the quickest way to the answer, but there are different reasons that you could use. So please remember that if on the chat you're seeing a reason come up and you're like, oh, I haven't used that. I got the same answer, but my reason's different. It's not necessarily wrong. You've just gone about it a different way. Only one answer so far, guys. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to go through it. Remember, it's really important to try. Like Yolanda always tells you at the beginning of the lesson, you should have your pen, your paper, and you should be doing all of the examples. And when I go through it, you are correcting. Okay, 1 more minute. Okay, guys. So CD is parallel to FG. I know that because of the arrows, right? Hopefully by now, this is easy peasy stock standard. We can identify parallel lines. Now, again, you don't have to start with x. I'm going to start with x because it's the one that I can see is quite easy for me to do. If I look at x, I can see that it is adjacent to the angle 134 that I've been given. I can also see that they are on a straight line. They're both adjacent angles on the straight line CD. And so what that means is I can use the reasons that we've learned previously to say that x plus 134 degrees must equal 180. And my reason for that is angles on a straight line. Right? So, guys, I'm going through the answer. So let's check. So we use our inverse operations now. We're solving an equation. I'm going to therefore subtract 134 degrees on both sides. And that gives me an x value of 46 degrees. So remember, fill it in on your diagram. Might be useful, might not be, but it might be. Okay, so that's x. Hopefully not too tricky, not too confusing. Angles on a straight line. I now need to find y. So if I have a look at where y is, again, there's lots of different shapes that I can use, but the sort of easiest one to get directly to my answer is this upside down backwards F shape. That tells me that angle y corresponds to 134 degrees. And so what that means is I can immediately say y is equal to 134 degrees, and my reason, corresponding angles. State your parallel lines. CD is parallel to FG, but I immediately got my answer. I didn't have to do anything else. Now, I saw someone said alt angles for y. That is absolutely fine. What I assume you did was you did vertically opposite to get 134 over here, and then you saw a Z shape like that. It's not a great Z, but a Z shape like that, telling you that those two were alternate. 100% correct. So guys, that's what I was saying earlier. There are multiple ways to get the answer. Just because I've done corresponding doesn't mean there's incorrect ways. Corresponding is the fastest way to get our answer, but there are other ways that you can get exactly the same answer. Alrighty, so screenshots, please. Any questions, raise your hand. But I'm going to put up a brain break, but I'm not going to leave it up for long because we've got 15 minutes left and I would like to do some meatier questions and for you to try a couple more by yourselves. So you can try the brain break if you want. Otherwise, just have a stretch, move your body a little bit. You've been sitting for 45 minutes and then we'll have a look at some more. Cameron, yeah, basically. Okay, so Cameron's saying we must look at our angles from every angle possible, essentially. Yeah, we need to try and as you get more used to it, your brain will start to like recognize these shapes a lot easier. So you'll look at a diagram and you'll know automatically what you need to do. So like, okay, I've been doing this for years and years and years and years. I can look at a diagram and I'm like, okay, cool, it's going to be this, 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 this. Your brain will eventually train itself to do that. But yes, we need to look at everything possible and see how we can work with it. All right, so I mostly also want to put up my brain break because I think my joke for the day is quite funny given our topic. Guys, try the brain break if you really want. If you think you can do it in 2 minutes, do it. Otherwise, leave it, have a stretch, move, and then we're going to do some more examples because I think that's more important than a brain break right now.
And that joke is really funny. I hope that all of you get it. It's some like, you know, these like jokes that you just read them and you're like, oh my word. Those kind of jokes. Parallel lines have so much in common, and they do. It's a shame they'll never meet. That relationship.
I saw someone.
That you never become closer. Sorry. Yeah.
No, I saw someone. I was like, I think it's like a maths. Clearly, I have time in life. think it's a maths teacher on some like social media platform, and she did like a thing of maths love stories, and one of them was parallel lines and their tragic love story that they'll never meet.
I was about to say the same. So you know what? It's that relationship where we can love each other, but we can never touch. We can never get closer.
Exactly.
The kind of relationship that grade 8 is allowed to have is a parallel line relationship.
Okay, guys, I'm seeing some answers for the Maths 24. None of them are correct. And I know exactly what your mistake is because I did the same thing. I'm not going to tell you though, because you need to look, my only hint, look very, 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 very carefully at the pictures. I'm going to give you 2 more seconds to see if we get a correct answer here. Otherwise, and Yolanda, remember my mistake from last time? I've just realized another mistake. So my answer wasn't even right from last time. Oy vey.
Oh, wow. There's a game in it. Oh, yeah, I saw. Okay, now I see. I see 2 things also that it could be a potential. Yeah, I see 2 things also. I see it.
Oops.
Yeah, guys, it's just this one is really hard. So you can even if you don't get it right, if no one get it right, take it for homework. But please look at the clock. Look at the this thingy, this what you call this worm, right?
I don't know, whatever it is.
Exactly, or caterpillar. It's not the same with what you have seen all over, meaning that there's a lot of differences going on. So this one is complex, but I hope that you have fun. And if you love it with this load shedding, it's good to take a screenshot and do it with your family. Teach them maths, and if they are good and better than you, then they will teach you maths. It's a good one. I think it's really a good one to try it at home.
Okay, guys, not seeing the right answer. So what we'll do is I'll start Monday's lesson with the correct answer here. Well done on trying though. We've got 10 minutes and I do want you to do some more questions. So I want to see which ones I want to give you, you know. Apparently I like to repeat myself. So we are going to try these 3 that you see on the screen. Do not stress about the numbering, just accept it for what it is and move on. But I want you to try these 3. I'm saying 3 in 10 minutes. Let's start with, okay, so this will be 1, 2, and 3. I am going to give you 5 minutes. Wherever you're at after 5 minutes, I will do the answers and you can mark, but you've got 5 minutes to try all of these. Identify your parallel lines and see how you can find your answers. Litle, I'm not too sure why your hand's up. What's wrong?
Ma'am, I need help with number 4, the last one, ma'am.
Okay, but Litle, when I asked you to raise hands for questions, why didn't you? Okay, so please remember when I asked
needed to do something, ma'am.
Okay, what do you need help with? Litle, what do you need help with?
How do you get 134 degrees?
Remember,
How do you
it's
get
corresponding-
134 degrees?
Okay, it's corresponding.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
remember, there's the F shape. So here's my F, which means that 134 corresponds to Y. So it's just corresponding angles.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Right, guys, sorry. There are your 3 questions. I do apologize. Remember, identify your parallel lines and see if you can solve for X and Y in question 1, just X in question 2, and X, Y, and Z in question 3. If you have questions, guys, put them on the chat. We'll help you there, but right now you're trying these 3. Okay. My writing went a bit weird there, but whatever. I'm going to give you 1 more minute and then I'm going to go through these and I'll leave it like this so you can take screenshots as soon as I've gone through all of them and then hopefully you have your answers. Guys, the lesson ends at 7 o'clock. Just remember that. Alrighty, I'm going to go through, mark what you have. Otherwise, take a screenshot when you're done. So the first one, all of my highlighting here, guys, is the parallel lines. So first one, I've got X and Y that I need to find. I can see that X is opposite and importantly, vertically opposite to 68. So nice and easy, X is 68, vert up angles equal. Right, now remember, fill it in as you go, because now what I see is that I have an F shape. Right, there's my F shape, which means that 68 and Y correspond to each other. So Y is also equal to 68 degrees because of corresponding angles. Remember to write your parallel lines. I'm just doing that on the next line. AB is parallel to CE. Nice and easy for question 1. Okay, vert up and then corresponding. Okay, for question 2, definitely not hard to identify what shape we're working with. We can very clearly see it's the zigzag. So these 2 angles are equal to each other, but we do have to set up an equation. So 2x, I'm actually going to do this, 2x plus 10 degrees is equal to 4x minus 10 degrees. And my reason is alternate angles. Now, guys, remember, whenever you set up an equation, you need to solve the equation. And you need to go back to your equation knowledge, and there's videos on this online. So we're going to use our inverse operations. I'm going to bring the 4x over, making it minus 4x. So 2x minus 4x is equal to minus 10, and I'm going to bring this 10 over, so minus 10. 2x minus 4x is negative 2x, and minus 10 minus another 10 is negative 20. I'm solving for x, remember, so I'm going to divide both sides by negative 2 because I want x alone, not negative 2x. Now, guys, remember, negative divided by a negative is a positive. So negative 20 divided by negative 2 is positive 10. And so I've got that x is 10. If we sub it in, 2 times 10 is 20, plus 10 is 30 degrees. 4 times 10 is 40, minus 10 is 30 degrees. They are both equal to each other, as alternate angles are. Right, if we go to question 3, there's a little bit more going on because I had 2 sets of parallel lines. AB, so the red, is parallel to DE, and also BC in green is parallel to EF. So I had a little bit going on here. but I needed to find X, Y, and Z. So I'm going to start with X. Again, you don't have to start alphabetically, but I'm going to. I see that X and 32 degrees form a U shape. That was a terrible color to pick, so let me try that again. Okay. So here's my U shape, or the cup shape. And so 32 plus X must give me 180 degrees. They're co-interior. So X plus 32 degrees gives me 180, my reason, co-interior angles, and state my parallel lines. Now this is where stating the parallel lines is important because we've got two sets here. So I need to be very clear that I'm working with AB and DE. Solve your equation, subtract 32 on both sides. 180 minus 32 gives us an X value of 148. So all I did here was I said X is equal to 180 minus 32. I solved my equation. So X is 148. I'm going to put that on my diagram because it might be helpful to me. It definitely is, because now when I move over to Y, I can see that X and Y are on the straight line. So when I add them together, I should get 180. So Y plus 148 degrees should give me 180. Nice and easy, angles on a straight line. And so Y is equal to 32 degrees. Now guys, you didn't have to use that. If you have a look here, you've also got an F shape, which means Y and 32 are corresponding angles. So that's an alternative reason that you could have used, corresponding angles. Finally, we have Z that we need to find. If we look at our diagram, we've got a lot going on, but if we look at our diagram, we see that we have this upside down, sideways F shape that I'm drawing terribly here in purple. And that means Y corresponds to Z. Because we know Y is 32, very easy, Z is equal to 32 degrees, my reason, corresponding angles. Now again, guys, lots of different reasons that you can use. All of them correct as long as you are correctly applying your geometry reasons.